So, I was out here this morning. A cherry tree has fallen over. Well, fallen over with the help of the chainsaw, right? It's a big old cherry. It's one of the bigger cherries I've ever seen. There's more down below. I need more hardwood than I do cherry. I've got some cherry. Wild cherry grows very prevalent here. But they also have black knot. And black knot is a disease which will carry over onto plum trees, other cherry trees like choke cherry trees, all of that. A lot of frogs this year, folks. A frog just jumped underneath the tripod. So in order to get some of the maple, I need to get that big cherry out of the way. Still working on firewood. It has been so wet, folks. The wet, if it's not wet, it is significantly in the 90% humidity with 80 and high 90s temperature. The feel-like temperature is well over 100. It's just really gross. I try not to work in the heat. I try not to work when it's wet. And I try not to work a day before I have to go to work, a paying job, right? So it rained last night. Today is one of the hottest days we've had so far. It is really, really, really gross. We've got smoke coming in from Canada. The air quality is not good because of the smoke and the humidity. The heat is really, really high, and it is wet underfoot. A very, very bad combination to get into the woods and try to get out some wood. Time is running out because of the rain. All the rain we've had, folks. It's just got to be done. It's crunch time. And probably even if we get the rest of the summer with no humidity and some wind and some sun, some of this just won't dry, like the beech won't dry, the oak won't dry, the maple may dry. And if you debark the birch, that may dry more. But it's crunch time, and I have to get with it. I have to get at it regardless of all the heat obstacles in nature, right? So I'm going to be careful. Put fly dope on. I've got a gallon of water somewhere. I'll drink right out of the jug. Sexy, right? Sexy. Doesn't matter. I don't care. It serves the purpose. And folks, there was a guy that I know. Him and his wife came over. I had met her a few times, and they're just a nice couple, and they call themselves country. Well, they are country, but they don't live like we do in here, right? We try to self-sustain as much as possible, folks. We burn our own wood. In order to burn our own wood, we have to go out in the woods, and we have to cut the trees down, delimit, haul it out, buck it up, split it, stack it, and then once it's, close to fall or in the fall or whatever, then it goes into the woodshed, right? So you handle the same piece of wood several times. That's just the way it is. It's a lot of hard work. It's not the safest job there is out there, right? So they came over and they heard me across the road with the chainsaw. So they followed the four-wheeler path and the sound of the chainsaw. And they stood back and they watched until I noticed them and shut the chainsaw off, because they really surprised me, folks. So they noticed they hadn't been here for quite a few months. It was way before last winter. And they saw all the progress that I've done, and they were surprised at all the progress I've done, considering that it has been so rainy, right? So I explained to them, if you really want something bad enough, you have to pick and choose when you can do it. But if it's raining constantly and the area is flooded or has a tendency to flood, and you have a beaver problem, and you have all these things that come up, like washing out the culvert, right? Which has been fixed, by the way. you have to get it done, whether you're going to get wet or not. It just comes to a point that it's going to have to be done regardless of the weather, right? So they were quite surprised that I had gotten so much done, even though it had been rainy. So he looked at my chainsaw and he thought that would be a good size for his wife. His wife looked at him and she goes, "You don't expect me to run a chainsaw, do you?" And he said, "Well," he said, "women that run chainsaws are pretty sexy." He said, "In fact, homestead women are pretty sexy in his opinion." And she looked at him and she was kind of sad. She was kind of sad. She looked at him and she goes, do you really want me to help you out in the woods? Do you really want me to help you with the firewood?" She goes, I am willing to do that, but you had never asked." And he said, "Well, you have never offered." So they were going out this week to buy a chainsaw just like mine. She lifted it up and I taught her how to start it, and she was able to start it. And I had her cut a few 3-inch trees with it. And she liked it. She was scared of it, but she really enjoyed it enough. So she agreed that she thought it was fun. She thought it was fun going out into the woods. Well, it's fun at first because it's new and it's exciting. It's not fun when it has to be done and everything is wet or it's sweltering hot and it's slippery underfoot and the bugs are horrendous. It becomes pretty old pretty fast. But I got a pretty good chuckle out of that when he said homestead women are sexy. Well, she wants to please her husband, and she didn't realize that he really wanted company doing all this stuff. It had always been, without saying, that she would do the canning, she would do the gardening, and he would get the firewood and he would maintain the yard, right? Well, she likes being out in the woods, and he helps with whatever he can, and she'll help stack the wood when he brings it in and mark it and all that stuff. But she did not realize that he wanted company doing that and for them to work as a team. So I thought that was pretty nice to hear, pretty nice to witness, folks. So homestead women, especially if you live alone and especially if you live like I do, if you don't do it, it does not get done. I had a lady come and look at some of my baby ducks, and she pulled in. I didn't know her very well. She was kind of an acquaintance of an acquaintance. And she pulled in and she goes, "I was under the impression that you live by yourself." I said, "I do live by myself." She goes, "It looks like a man lives here." I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I see a chainsaw, I see cans of gas, I see oil." She goes, "I see a wood split, I see a lawnmower and a weed whacker." Because I had all that stuff out. And I said, "Well, that's just part of living in here. You know, if this stuff is really needed for a homestead. Now, if you want to run a homestead, especially the way that I do, semi-primitively, if I didn't have a chainsaw, which I just got and just learning how to use, right? And I'm getting better, I'm getting more confident, and I'm learning a lot. If I didn't have that, I'm not able to get my own firewood. If I didn't have a four-wheeler, I couldn't do hardly anything. I would have to lug everything by hand, or a wagon, and I'm almost 60 years old, folks. I can't be doing that when it's like 95 degrees out with almost 100% humidity. I just can't do that. Not anymore, anyway. I used to. And so everything that I've got here is very necessary. And if we're going to separate male tools from female tools, we just can't do that, because if you're a homesteader, all that stuff and more is needed. So it doesn't matter if you're a male that owns that or a female that owns that. I look at it as you are a homesteader and you are trying to be self-sufficient and you're a hard worker and you have that drive to get things done, a homesteader has all those tools. It doesn't mean that you are a man that that owns it, right? It doesn't mean that, folks. If some of you think that homesteaders, especially women homesteaders, are sexy, well, thank you. You know, bandana, fly dope, orange shirt, pants tucked into socks, steel-toed boots, sweat dripping off you, smelling like fly dope, smelling like dirt. That's all right. That's all right. It is what it is, and we should be, if we're homesteaders, there's no roles. Everybody should be pitching in. Everybody should know exactly what needs to be done. So if the other person can't do it, then the other person could be doing things that are needed. There's no roles here. It's the only role is the role to get it done. That's the only role. It's the get it done role. So there you go, folks. There you go.